You know, when the Trump administration decided that they could just start rounding people up without any due process and then ship them off to a gulag down in El Salvador, I figured that this would have been a bipartisan issue of sorts. I figured that people on both sides of the aisle could recognize that due process is, in fact, one of the fundamental building blocks of our free society. But what we have seen instead is people over at Fox News enabling Donald Trump's authoritarian behavior while running defense for him every step of the way, which means they are teaching their viewers to be the little fascist freaks that Donald Trump has probably always wanted them to be. And now you've got people like Will Cain, who is going to war with a congressperson just because he wanted to go travel down to El Salvador to stand up for the Constitution. I mean, we are truly living in the upside down. Here's Maxwell Frost trying to remind Will Cain that this administration has ignored due process. If you guys do appreciate my work, please do remember to subscribe.
He had a protected status, as you just read. And if he is to be detained and deported, there's a process he needs to go through. And that's the whole situation here. I'm not here to litigate even a very specific person. I'm here to talk about the fact that he represents a very big problem with this administration, that they have no problem scooping somebody up based on tattoos and vibes and sending them to a foreign country's prison. And then we have the commander talking about sending homegrowns next.
Look, folks, this should be non-controversial. Even if Kilmar Abrego Garcia was the worst criminal in the world, he would still deserve due process under our system. That is what our Constitution allows for. That is what is protected in this country. That is one of the fundamental building blocks of our free society. Because if the government is allowed to just go around and accuse people of doing bad things and then use that as a pretext to take or carry out an action against them or ship them off to a faraway land, then nobody else is free. Because if there's no legal recourse for you to refute the claims against you, that means that this could happen to American citizens too. And like Maxwell Frost just said, that is exactly what the Trump administration is starting to talk about. They are going to do this to American citizens next, and that is why the due process is so important. This should be non-controversial. And for Will Cain to even have any sort of pushback on this at all is absolutely insane. They go on to talk about, or at least Maxwell Frost points out, that, this administration is also blatantly ignoring the Supreme Court, which is a damning detail in this whole mess.
We want to happen, but that's not what's going on. And you want to talk about courts. Wait, hold on. You want to talk about courts, but the highest court in the land told Donald Trump what to do: facilitate him coming back to the country. And guess what they did? They flipped the bird to the Supreme Court. That's not the rule of law.
Again, Maxwell Frost is exactly right here. The Trump administration argued this all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court stepped in a 9-0 unanimous decision and said they need to facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. These people need to be provided due process under our system. But that is not what the Trump administration is doing. They have shoved all of that aside. They want to act like little fascists. Donald Trump wants to point at something and say, hey, get it done, and then that thing gets done. Ignoring the Supreme Court is not a rule of law president. This is what we should have expected from the 34-time felon, Donald Trump. He truly believes that our rules, our laws, that they just don't apply to him. Donald Trump wants to be able to do whatever it is the hell that he wants to do, and that nobody should be able to check his power. And that is exactly what they are trying to do here. And Will Cain thinks he's cute by pulling up this old tweet from Maxwell Frost while saying, oh, well, I thought you said that the Supreme Court was illegitimate.
July 1st of 2024, you posted on your website the following. It's up right now if anyone wants to go to your website. Our country and the world will now recognize this day as the day the Supreme Court of the United States effectively became an illegitimate, politically corrupt arm of the conservative right wing. That's when the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that Donald Trump had immunity from prosecution. And on that day 10 months ago, you called the Supreme Court of the United States illegitimate. Here today, all of a sudden, you seem to be very dedicated, principled, in fact, to the simple rules of law, due process, and legitimacy of the court.
I still hold that the Supreme Court is very much skewed to the right and that there is corruption on the court. I do hold that today. But the fact that the court is so skewed to the right, and even then, they're still saying a complete decision, unanimous decision, that he needs to be brought home, shows that this shouldn't be a partisan issue. It should be a thing that Democrats, Republicans, everybody are coming behind. Bring the guy home so he can go through due process. That is what the Supreme Court, the conservative-leaning Supreme Court, said.
Yeah, I don't think this is the burn that Will Cain thinks it is. If anything, this is a more damning indictment on the Trump administration, because you have even people like Alito and Thomas coming out and saying that, yo, bro, you need to afford these people some due process. You need to facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Even the radicals that are currently on the right-wing Supreme Court, that is what they are saying. So Will Cain thinks that he had some sort of gotcha here, as though, you know, two things can't be true at once, and he just got absolutely owned there. The Supreme Court absolutely has a conservative bent, and we have seen a whole bunch of different corruption going on with all of the millions or whatever that Justice Thomas was bringing in, and all of that nonsense. All of that is still true, and even when you have those extreme radicals on the Supreme Court who are coming out and saying that the Trump administration is doing the wrong thing here, that is a bigger indictment on what these people are doing. It is absolutely insane to me that people like Will Cain think that that is some sort of own or something. Okay, you guys got to prepare yourself for this next clip, because Will Cain here tries to deny that Donald Trump has said that he wants to start deporting homegrowns. I'm not joking.
And we want to make sure that we draw the line here at Kilmar Garcia, because it's not just about him. It's about the fact that in the Oval Office, Donald Trump brought up that he wants to do the same thing to quote unquote homegrowns, homegrowns being U.S. citizens, a complete violation of our Constitution. I don't want to wait till it gets to that point. The reason I'm here as a Congress representing Orlando, Florida, is because I've received hundreds and hundreds of calls and emails and mail from my constituents. I represent a lot of immigrants. I represent a lot of people who see themselves represented in this situation. They're saying, Congressman, do what you can now, because it's him today and it can be one of us tomorrow.
I want to dig in on that point. You've made that point several times, but before we move forward, I have to stop down with what you just said. Donald Trump's made a statement about wanting to deport American citizens. Do you have that in front of you? I've not seen that statement. Can you please quote where that comes from, that he would like to deport American citizens?
He said it in the Oval Office. He said he wants to go for homegrowns next, people born and raised in the United States.
Do you have anything? And then, do you have anything besides your word on that? I have not seen that. So, beyond your word, do you have the source of that? I would love to see that clip or that transcript of him saying he wants to deport American citizens.
Is this dude serious? How is this guy working on the biggest cable news network in our country, and he doesn't know that Donald Trump came out and said, "Oh, I really want to do that to homegrowns next. Oh, I would really, really love to do that." How is that even possible? How is it possible that Will Cain is in such a MAGA bubble that he didn't know that Donald Trump said that? Every single person needs to know that that is exactly what Donald Trump said. He said it multiple times now. He was caught on a hot mic with Bukele when he was saying, you need to build 5 more facilities because we're going to send homegrowns next. How can anybody deny that that is what Donald Trump has said? That is absolutely wild. That is actually journalistic malpractice. Will Cain should be absolutely ashamed of himself. And then to try to put up some front like, do you have a source for that? Do you have a source for that, while they're sitting here on a TV interview, is absolutely insane. I hope his producers were able to pull that up after the fact and show him. But for him not to know this before coming into this interview is absolutely insane. It is absolutely insane. Now we'll just go ahead and show you this one last clip where, Will Cain is trying to say that Maxwell Frost here is grandstanding with his trip to El Salvador.
From this vantage point, respectfully, it appears as though your trip to El Salvador is less about principle and even less about Abrego Garcia and more about grandstanding and fear-mongering American citizens in a continuing narrative that casts yourself as a hero in this melodrama and the villain as Donald Trump.
I am no hero at this moment. I am one of many fighting for the rule of law and fighting to ensure that everybody in this country have due process. I am one of many. I'm not the first member of Congress here, and I'm sure as hell not going to be the last. This isn't about Maxwell Frost. This is about preventing our country from losing what makes it exceptional, that no matter who you are, when you are in the United States, you have due process. That is one of the many things that sets us apart from other places in this world. And as a member of the United States Congress, I'm going to fight like hell to preserve that no matter what.
I mean, Will Cain is just a pile of garbage, right? You've got Congress members who are using money out of their own pocket because the Republicans denied their congressional funding. They're traveling down to El Salvador to stand up for the Constitution. And then you got Will Cain trying to say, oh, you're just grandstanding. You're just trying to be the hero here. What is wrong with these people? Could you imagine for 1 second if somebody like Steve Bannon or Alex Jones or, pick whatever conservative you want. Could you imagine if they got rounded up and they were put in jail, they weren't given a court date, they weren't given any due process? Could you imagine what the conservatives would be doing? I mean, they would literally try to assert their Second Amendment rights, right? They would be out there on the streets, and rightfully so, because due process is one of the most fundamental building blocks of a free society. Like I continue to say, if the government is allowed to go around and start accusing people of doing bad things and then using that as a pretext to put you in jail or to send you off to a gulag in El Salvador, and there is no legal recourse to refute the claims against you, then we do not have a free society. This should be a non-controversial issue in the United States of America. But this is what the MAGA brain rot does to you. Daddy Trump doesn't like due process? Oh, well, I guess then I don't like due process. Oh, what? Daddy Trump just wants to round people up and ship them off to a gulag? Oh, well, then that's what Daddy Trump wants to do. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Good thing. This is absolutely pathetic. We are staring into the face of a fascist cult right now. And Fox News is doing a disservice to the rest of America because they are radicalizing these people into believing that stripping away due process rights from certain people, well, that might be an okay thing to do. They try to make this argument as though you want to give due process to all of these illegal immigrants? That would take 20 years. When that is an absolute sham of an argument. If you know anything about the system, you know that these deportation hearings can last about 10 or 15 seconds. It's not going to take a whole lot of time. And if you strip away due process from some folks, that means they're going to come for you next. That is why keeping this due process in place and unscathed and making sure that it is one of the fundamental things that we respect in this country, that's why it's so important. Because if they can start going after the out group, it's only a matter of time before they start coming after the in-group. Fox News should be absolutely ashamed with themselves. And I'll just say, I am super grateful, I guess is the word, that we have Democratic senators and House members who are actually standing up. They're putting their money where their mouth is. They're making noise around this Kilmar Abrego Garcia story, and it is the exact right thing to do. These are the people who are actually standing up for the Constitution. These are the people who actually care about the rule of law in the United States, and I think they'd all deserve a round of applause. While people over at Fox News should probably get slapped around a little bit for, just muddying the waters for this fascist administration. So I will leave it there for now, folks. If you guys got anything out of this video, please do remember to smash that like button and subscribe. Maybe share it with a friend or two. I'd very much appreciate that. We are trying to build something here on the left that adequately pushes back against this right-wing media ecosystem that just shovels this fascist nonsense for Donald Trump every single day. So if you do like what I do here, please do remember to hit that subscribe button. It is free. And if you guys want to see how Chris Van Hollen's trip to El Salvador went and the things that he went through while he was down there, go ahead and watch that video on the screen now. Otherwise, I'll see you guys on the next one.